Welcome everyone to the first MFA student reading of 2021 and our third of the 2020-2021 year. So thank you all for joining us. And I just wanted to let you know that after our three readers, there will be time for questions. So throughout the night, if you end up having a question, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll get to it at the end. Okay, so without further ado, I'm very excited for the readings from Rebecca Gearhart, Ahmad Aljawad, and Austyn Wohlers. So first, I'm going to have PJ Lombardo introduce Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. How's it going? All right, 1 second. Okay. Here we go. Rebecca Gearhart loves people. I open our introduction this way, not as an empty gesture towards her capacity for kindness, though I'm sure that anyone friendly with Rebecca would attest to the truth of this statement. I mark Rebecca's vast affinity for the human being in our whist, in our laughter, because I find this affinity to be a powerful engine for the nuance, dexterity, and plurality her writing embodies. These twin vines of the comic and the starry wind through Rebecca's prose in finely plotted and explosively sincere mappings of adolescence, loss, family, solidarity, frustration, ventures of memory, the Jewish diaspora, and more. In her series of short plays, a scriptural Lilith bellows with the salt of eternity, before we are beamed through a number of stills from Judaistic life throughout the centuries. In one of the first scenes in her novel, two teenagers playing tough in the parking lot outside Hebrew school slides into mayhem, illustrating our shared burden of vulnerability, as a parent's headlights shine on two of their unaware, love-stricken instructors curling around each other in the nearby woods. I'm sure my description falls short of conveying exactly how impactful her literature is. To provide an example, when Rebecca finished reading the novel excerpt I've highlighted at a prior event in Indianapolis, you could have heard half a pin drop as the listeners found themselves dazzled by her art. As a painter and a student of painting, Rebecca Gearhart knows how to follow those holes in your eyes all the way through to the back of your skull. She uses this skill along with a rigorous work ethic and a thorough commitment to creativity to craft texts that carry readers through polyvocal, historically attuned narratives with generosity, with fervor, with consideration, and of course, with an earnest fascination for every human being. When I asked what biographical details she wanted me to include in this introduction, Rebecca just told me to tell you guys that she's from Westchester, New York. So I won't list her many stellar publications and I won't meander. From Westchester, New York to Kansas City, to Canada, to Nebraska, to Israel, to Florida, to Indiana, to tonight, please welcome to the virtual stage my good friend, Rebecca Gearhart.
Thanks, Peach. Guys, today's PJ's birthday. Happy birthday, PJ. So I'm gonna read a little bit from a science fiction project I've been working on for a few years. So the first chapter is called Landing, and it's separated by characters. So I'll name the character as we go into each section. So chapter 1, Landing. Rebecca. The starship is dark because it is night and because we keep it dark most of the time to allow for rest and to help with our stress levels. Managing the stress levels of the astronauts is one of the main objectives of the ship's AI. Stressed astronauts do not carry out successful exploration missions. I am in my sleep skin. It is tight around my body. I was surprised the first time I slipped into it that I could breathe from inside of it, but I can. Sometimes I wish I could not. Sometimes I wish I weren't here, but I am. I was chosen, as was Leah and Isaac and Seth. We are the colony. I wriggle myself free of the skin and walk carefully as not to wake my compatriots to the control room, which is sheathed in windows that we call the membrane. All around is a blackness that is darker than the darkest moments inside the ship. Soon, though, we will be able to see Vera, hazy violet against the black. That is what we are told to look for. I do not know how I ended up in this position. I am not someone who has excelled in life. I think it is possible that my disposability, my disposable nature has qualified me. All four of us are an odd balance of disposable and, on a basic level, qualified. Seth worked as a chemist for a company developing adhesives for office supplies. I walk up to the curve of the membrane and run my fingers across it. I think about how quickly I'd be torn apart should it break. There's a noise behind me. I turn around and see Isaac has woken up. He has trouble sleeping. His insomnia fights through even the strongest drugs that the ship dispenses to him. I think this will get worse for him on the planet, but I don't say so. Couldn't sleep? Never, he says. He runs his hand over his face, his stubble, the bags under his eyes. We should be able to see her soon, see the planet soon. He reaches for the window. We have a habit of doing this, the four of us, of touching the membrane between us and it being outer space. Slowly, the others wake up and join us. Leah is the most excited. Leah was a high school biology teacher. Seth is the least excited. Leah touches the membrane, but Seth does not. Play Chopin, Seth tells the ship. The ship complies. After not long, we can see the planet. Even Seth chokes on his words. It glows. It's hazy like a ball of mold or of algae. Seth. The landing of the ship is rocky and Seth wants to reach for Rebecca, but he stops himself. He braces himself in his seat and closes his eyes and enjoys the last moment on the safety of the ship before having to face the planet. They land in darkness. The planet, which had glowed from afar, is dank and dark up close. Seth thinks about being in the swamp. He'd gone to the Everglades as a child. They'd taken an airboat tour and seen alligators, he and his father. The starship lands and decompresses with a sound like hissing steam. They know the air on the planet is breathable. Tests have been run. Still, it is filtered on its way in, and by the time it reaches them in the control room, it is neither hot nor sweet. To Seth, it just tastes like regular air. Should we go out, Leah asks. Leah is too excited, and Seth has a bad feeling about it, but he lets the others shoot her down. No way, says Isaac, not until we can see. They walk up close to the membrane and look out, their faces pressed against the cool, see-through shield like they are children outside a toy store. Seth doesn't see anything different than he might see on Earth. What do you think, Rebecca asks him. It looks like Florida. It does, but purple. The mission is simple. It doesn't even involve exploration, really. Their only job is to set up a viable colony. They are the colony. Their job is to survive. Seth knows this will be harder than it sounds, but he is comforted by the fact that the planet resembles a place he visited as a child. The four of them stand gazing at the planet. Leah. Leah quivers. She wants to leave. She wants to traverse the violet planet, the new green planet. She turns to Isaac. We did it, she says. He's grinning, not like the other two. They are so somber, but Leah and Isaac are grinning. Sometimes she thinks it is as if she alone out of the entire colony understands the blessing that their opportunity is. She breathes in deeply, hoping to sense some particle of the planet, but it's been filtered out. She'll have to wait until tomorrow. She doesn't know how she'll sleep. She's been asleep for days. They all have. I'm going to go to the grow room, she says. Leah is in charge of the ship's greenhouse. She is the expert on growing things. She walks away from the membrane and disappears down the ship's corridors towards the humid greenhouse, which is set up to imitate, as closely as scientists could understand them, the conditions of Earth being replicated on the conditions of Vera. She puts her hand up to the locked door and it opens for her, enveloping her in hot, wet air. Here, everything grows. She's particularly fond of nightshades and crouches in a corner enveloped in a gnarled eggplant vine. They haven't borne fruit yet, but the flowers on them indicate that it will happen soon. She reaches out for a petal. She fought for eggplant, an impractical food, the others argued, but she protested that they wouldn't want to live on corn and potatoes alone. And what else grew in the greenhouse? Lima beans, kale, banana tree saplings, hot peppers, bell peppers. There's citrus tree saplings and red potatoes and purple potatoes. There's sprouted avocado pits. There are alfalfa sprouts, all of it densely packed together, waiting to be transplanted. She closes her eyes, imagines the planet, imagines what it will be like in 10, 12 hours when Sol floods the planet's dark indigo with brightness and they are released from the ship. The planet. Outside the starship, the planet is quiet. The ship is alien, but not necessarily toxic, and it draws no reaction from the land around it. The vegetation surrounding the ship is thick. It will require a sharp blade to hack it down before the colony can walk through it. The growing life is different on Vera than it is on Earth. On Vera, the growing life pushes back. It's sturdy with a backbone. It will resist their footsteps. As the starship slowly sinks into the ground, the plant life around it pushes. Their roots quiver. They are awake now. How long have they been dormant? The planet remains quiet but changed. Rebecca. I am the first to return to sleep, possibly because I am the one who most wants to be home, the one who least wants to be here. While Leah is playing in the dirt and Isaac and Seth stand at the membrane looking out, I trudge back to where the sleeping skins hang, and like a butterfly willing itself backwards towards Chrysalis, I retreat. I administer too much sleeping medication to myself, knowing I will dream, hoping I will dream of Earth. I do. Isaac. Isaac waits as the others go back to sleep. One after another, in their sleep skins they go. He stays in the control room. This is where he feels most comfortable. Isaac had always had trouble sleeping. It suited him to this job, though. Somebody always has to be awake on the ship. The others left without even asking him. And even if he were lucky enough to feel tired, Isaac is too excited to sleep. It reminds him of hunting, sitting behind the membrane, looking out at the quiet dark. The only thing visible is the orb surrounding the starship, lit up from the interior. Otherwise, the planet is black, impenetrable blackness everywhere. He stretches his back and gets up out of his seat and turns his back on the membrane, making his way to the sleeping quarters. His compatriots hang in their skins, each one visceral and tender and glowing with a frosted transparency. He watches for the pulse of their breathing, the curves of their bodies against the membranes enveloping them, the hue of their skin. He craves exhaustion, but no amount of the sleep medication the ship dispenses brings him there. He steps forward, closer to his sleeping coworkers, and reaches out. The tips of his fingers graze Seth's sleep skin. It is warm and velvety under his touch. He swallows. His eyes burn with tears. He returns to the control room where he passes the night silently. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. That was so wonderful. My goodness. So next, I am going to be introducing Naima. So Naima, can you go ahead and introduce?
Austyn Wohlers is a writer from Atlanta, Georgia. She graduated summa cum laude in comparative literature and creative writing from Emory University in 2019, has published fiction in the Cincinnati Review, short fiction, Yalobusha Review, and elsewhere, and her critical work can be found in the Kenyon Review and Asymptote. She's also a musician involved in a range of projects, from releasing ambient music under her name and an EP with the Atlanta band Paradise Montage to Tomato Flower, her Baltimore-based art rock band with whom she's currently working on an album. But those are just the brass tacks of her bio. Austyn's writing is concerned, among other things, with charged dichotomies. In one story, she juxtaposes the digital and the analog to explore how history and the complex people creating it are archived in a time of rapidly changing technologies. In another, the non-virtual world and the world of Minecraft subtly blend as a 13-year-old girl attempts to navigate friendship and belonging. In Hothouse Bloom, Austyn's novel in progress, which depicts a woman who leaves behind her populated life for an apple orchard, a central opposition seems to be between the societally structured and natural worlds. Amidst these dichotomies, Austyn's characters excavate their own potential for unexpected action, for violence, for acclamation despite gnawing unease. These are big topics to grapple with, and Austyn's successful grappling is due in no small part to her skillful use of language, particularly her deceptively simple details, which are so precise that their accumulation creates intricate atmospheres almost without the reader noticing, imbuing what might otherwise be mundane with the kind of magic that can only come from giving something your full and undivided attention. This attention is also present in the guiding theme of interiority in Austyn's work. Quote, "My way of being in the world came about internally," muses her archivist, while the young Minecraft native cements her dislike of speech. In Hothouse Bloom, a chapter begins with the main character, quote, "trying to expand her heart laterally," the way stillness expands over the disrupted waters of a lake. And then in the next line, the narration notes, she was watching. Austyn's characters are watching then, and we get to watch them watch because Austyn is watching always, like good writers do. And though her characters shy away from words, ever leaning into the ineffable, we're lucky that Austyn has chosen to use words after all. And now we get to hear them. Please join me in welcoming Austyn to the Zoom stage.
Thanks, Naima. It's very sweet. I'm going to read from kind of an older story because I think it's a good length. If I should be sharing my screen maybe like 60% of the way through, so because there's a visual element, so watch out for that. She'd always admired music, and why not? It isn't so shameful to be a fan of something, a genuine fan whose passion and admiration is matched only by their ignorance. So gazing over at Lila while the piano music made its slow ambient descent down the scale over the speakers, she gazed with a heart full of love, yes, so full of love, of music and of Lila too, of Lila lounging across from her on the great white sofa, looking very closely at a translucent yellow pill, admiring it and saying that the capsule looked like a tiny bead of light. She swallowed it and washed it down with cucumber water. And then, looking back over at Derry, she waited for a response. Derry, alarmed and dreamy, always so anxious, yet constantly losing the thread of her concern. Now she was looking out across the patio with its cool light on the gray stones, making them look like lilac tiles, out past the tiny bowls of salt placed at the walls of the seaside spa, out at the dark field which she knew to be the sea, which was rising and falling with the music. Trying not to look at Lila, trying not to disturb her. She was searching for it, the ocean. For the lovely sea which could be smelled and heard but not seen in the heavy blackness of the night, invisible and nearly silent, but nearly immense in its presence like a beast lurking in the bushes. I have never been to a place so luxurious, she thought, remembering her nervousness, a place beside the sea. Doesn't it, Derry? Lila interrupted. Of course, said Derry, exposed. It was a familiar tone of voice, Lila's, soft the way a tiger's paw is soft. Often while out with their friends on the hot porches of cafes or huddled together in corners of bars, they would all lounge around drinking coffee or tea, laughing and speaking to one another with a kind of lush and knowing softness. And Derry became aware of what she considered a very manufactured elegance, unreal and tenuous like a spell, the inexplicable desire to destroy it, to destroy something, to ruin the moment with a dumb joke or an idle observation. Because she was somebody who liked to run her mouth, to hear people say banal things. But wanting to impress Lila, she was finding herself mute and distracted, but hoping quietly all the while that being here together would eventually allow them to feel out whether or not it was all right to drop the act. She closed her eyes very intentionally, chastising herself for having lost focus. She opened them again, leaned forward in her chair, and smiled, vowing elegance. How do you like the cucumber water? Derry asked. It's fine, said Lila. She picked up her phone, typing quickly with her exfoliated and well-manicured fingers. Meanwhile, a woman came by with a little platter of raw oysters over ice, lemon-drenched. Derry popped one into her mouth. Lila looked at her. Derry, do you think I'm somebody who's wise? Undoubtedly, said Lila, chewing. Lila smiled at her. Thanks, she said. Hard not to hate somebody like that, but she spoke earnestly with a frank way of looking right at a person. And although she was a little vain, a little pushy, she was never cruel. For all her faults, Derry would not withstand cruelty. She ate another oyster, chewing, still nervous. Say something, she told herself. You're blowing it. But the air was so calm, so serene, and so dense with the weight of the ocean that it almost felt sacrilegious to say anything. Don't destroy the silence with your nonsense. Don't destroy the perfect silence. She swallowed. Only Lila could say something. Lila, who was uninterested and acclimated to large circles of raw oysters. Lila said, my mother used to take me here. Did you know that? No, said Derry. I was very young, so young. She didn't even have to pay a fee for me. She would always put me in the youth yoga class while she went and relaxed with the other woman. I only recently started coming alone. Lila was smiling at the memory. How nice, said Derry. She was gazing again, at Lila, at the night, at Lila's purple handbag, the tiles, the bowls of rock salt. Thanks for hearing me out, said Lila, finally, sitting back and down in her chair the way a candle is extinguished. I feel like I've been talking a lot, she said. She frowned. She sighed and wrung her wrists. Should we go back in? Inside, they basked like lizards under the infrared, Lila looking like a speckled one with all her brown freckles, the smearing watercolor tattoo on her ribcage, bright and mottled, and Derry breathing beside her, Derry feeling her wet stomach touching the tile and imagining it was Lila's stomach, that she was Lila, dark-haired and with a look gentle and vaguely dissatisfied. How nice it would be to be Lila. They sweat together in the sauna, full of thick mists and large green aloe leaves poking out like sticks of incense. They shivered in the ice bath and dawdled in the hot tub. It seemed as though time were moving very slowly or not at all. There were no clocks and no windows. Derry thought of lotus eaters. She tried again to think of something to say to Lila, something impressive. No luck. Then looking around, she saw that she retained the impression of the ocean even inside, the walls so wet with condensation, the inside of the spa seeming like a seaside grotto at low tide, like the ocean itself had filled up completely to every corner of the wall and had now left it empty and dripping. Lila, what would your deserted island look like? Derry said in the hot tub, skittish, pulling her legs up in front of her. Lila stared back at her across the distance of the water. It was just the two of them, besides the stranger who was lounging with closed eyes. What do you mean? Said Lila. How would you live? I imagine sunsets, dolphins, green coconuts, a little shack by the sea. I think I would build all my buildings in a straight line to the very heart of the jungle where there is a volcano. That way I would never get lost. I would always have a path back to the shore. If I could only bring one book, I would bring Dream of the Red Chamber since it's so long. If I could only bring one album, I would bring the largest 80s compilation I could find. I would catch fish every day and fry them on an open fire. Suddenly aware of herself, she stopped. That sort of thing, she added meekly. Lila looked at her. She was smiling, but her eyes were dark. That's cute, she said. Derry felt the ocean, twice removed by the walls and by the night. I don't know, Derry, said Lila with exasperation. I would sign for help. They made an odd pair, meeting one Wednesday night when Lila sang pop songs at a bar, Derry entranced and unaware of the nature of her attraction, which was in truth an attraction to the music and not to Lila herself, who she had anyway befriended, so that she could be closer to a thing which she loved so much but did not understand, and Lila absorbing her into her orbit the way an enormous flower through its roots consumes a tiny clump of nitrogen. She made a momentous decision, drying herself off with a towel to step back into the sauna, thinking about it while they steamed, and again while they put on their uniforms to go eat in the cafe. A momentous decision. She would ruin her own life. 25 years old, and she had never ruined her own life. She had never even been in trouble. And why not? Plenty of her friends had ruined their lives and been saved. Abusive relationships, drug addictions, psychic breaks, credit card debt from all sorts of things. For Derry, it was the right of youth. That was what she was thinking at the massage counter. Meanwhile, Lila picked at the remains of her food, the beige uniform enormous on her thin shoulders, staring out at Derry from beneath her bangs, frowning and a little curious. I'm going to get us something nice, Derry had said, something Lila had never seen before. The woman at the counter was placid, with very clear skin and a high brown ponytail, dressed in baby blues, chalky greens, purples, inspecting her nails. Derry leaned over the black marble. She stared at the last page of the laminated brochure of spa packages, large and bound in a foamy material with abstract flowers circling the page numbers. Excuse me, Derry said, her heart pounding. The woman at the counter glanced up at her, smiling. I'd like to get the four-handed massage and the black caviar mask for me and my friend over there. She pointed at Lila, who was looking at her food again. How silly, ordering a thing like that, a black caviar mask. How silly, pulling at the ruby-colored credit card and signing her name, Dorothy Bauer, with a pen affixed with a fake flower on a receipt for $2,370.23. The woman wrote their numbers in a light blue marker on 2 slips of paper and handed them to Derry. I got us something good, said Derry, returning. She gave Lila the ticket. You'll like it. Said Lila, sipping iced tea through a giant straw. They lay in the salt room, the baked clay room, the low-temperature ice room. When their names were called, the woman pressed Derry's head into the face slit, and she felt her cheeks bulging through the little hole. She felt the hands of the masseuses on her body. She relaxed. Then they flipped her over and with a paintbrush applied the black beads to her face. The woman with the brush talking about all the vitamins, the minerals, the amino acids Derry's face would absorb, and Derry catching a glimpse of herself in the mirror, a face filling up with eggs, like a mask studded with tiny fragments of obsidian, the other woman rubbing her shoulders, Derry looking now at Lila's station just before they put the cucumbers over her eyes, only to see that Lila was no longer there. She waited for 30 minutes with her hands folded patiently over her body. Maybe Lila ran to the bathroom, she was thinking, quickly and before the mask was applied, but after the massage, since she had drunk so much tea, and now she was back, just across the room. Maybe Lila's massage table was moved due to some clerical error, or Lila's preference, or, God forbid, to get away from Derry. Maybe Lila had grown so bored with her she had driven home. Maybe she had taken an urgent call. Maybe the masseuses were so impressed with the hard softness of her skin, muscular with a soft layer of attractive fat like down feathering, that they had taken her into a special room all her own, a special room where they loved her, yes, where they were in there loving her, covering her with black caviar beads as black as her hair, leaving Derry all alone under the harshness of the yellow lights. Lila, she called out softly. Said one of the masseuses, apparently across the room. Nothing. And so on. Derry's mask was removed with mineral spring water. Still no Lila. She went and looked for Lila in the sauna among thick mists. She looked for Lila by the indoor pool where two people were holding each other in the water. She looked for Lila in the cafeteria. She looked for Lila in the ice bath, the warm pool, the hot tub, the salt room, the charcoal room, out on the patio where they had lounged, where the stars were obscured by the rolling black clouds. Jogging to her assigned locker, changing into her blue jeans and her blouse, she checked out and left the spa, forfeiting the $48 entrance fee to search for Lila in the open air. She looked all around the parking lot. Lila's car was still there, the blue sedan with CDs overflowing out of the center console. She looked back at the spa, uncomfortably bright in the soft night. She stood there for a moment, then decided to take a walk down the asphalt road. Since the spa was in the middle of nowhere, Derry walked along the asphalt where there was no sidewalk, stepping to the grassy bank whenever the gigantic headlights of a truck or a car would appear out of the darkness, the wetlands and the closed strip malls lit by white street lamps to her right, the grassy dunes leading to the beach to her left. She was sulking about, unsure if Lila were playing a cruel prank on her or if it were something else. She was imagining the conversation with her father. "Oh, Dad, horrible, it's horrible. I've gone and gotten myself into debt and I don't have any money," she would tell him. "Oh, my sweetheart, I thought I always told you to live below your means," he would say. He would lecture her. And then a text message from her bank would inform her that he had deposited $2,000 into her checking account. So why did it feel? There was a wooden stairwell. She took it and walked down the long path to the ocean, the low bridge through the dunes. Sweet Derry walking to the ocean, sweet Derry who could hardly imagine a consciousness other than her own, who imagined Lila sensitive, who imagined her thoughtful and intelligent, the kind of person who could be entranced by the blackness of the sea, who could feel the rubbery touch of fish eggs on her face and think with authority, "Now I will return them to the ocean." It was very dark away from the street. "I'm a little scared," thought Derry. Yes, maybe Lila was lost by the sea. The dunes were settling, the beach was flat. She walked across the dark sands, the ocean loud and present, the impression of the ocean even then, and then going outside, and it was night. She was groping around in the darkness, searching. Her heart was pounding. Yes, that was something Lila would do. Leave the spa to wash her face in the ocean, freshly massaged and testing new muscles in the buoyant ocean. Lila realizing the primacy of the ocean. At last they would have something to talk about. Derry's feet met the shoreline. "Lila," she called softly. No response. Dejectedly, she walked along the water. She was lost and so confused. She perked up a little, hearing mambo music, the high piano, and in the distance she saw the yellow lights of a seaside shack. It was a sandwich joint. Smoke was drifting up from its aluminum roof, and the walls were orange. She went towards it, feeling like a lonely person, always seeking connections. The bar was lively. She climbed onto one of the stools with its red cushion and its metal pole, and she ordered a cerveza. What was $4 more? It came out with a napkin and a lime. Yes, perhaps Lila had gotten lost in the ocean, she thought, taking a drink, swept out to sea as her final movement, a rejection of luxury. You romantic, she thought, chastising herself. She took another sip of beer. She took a second to look around at the patrons, and there was Lila, talking to a man, the black caviar in her hair. She was eating an enormous and sloppy Cuban sandwich, the pulled pork clinging to her lips, in a certain sense never looking prettier. As she ate her sandwich almost asymptotically, very slowly, one bite at a time, and smaller with each bite, so that she could go on eating the sandwich forever, Lila saying, "No problem," to the man she was talking to and laughing with her yellow teeth, looking like a creature dragged out from sea, catching Derry's eye out of the corner of her own, the patient way a shallow ocean predator stares you down from across the reef. Thanks.
Amazing job, Austyn. Thank you so much. And so now on to our last reader and last introducer, Philip, you can take it away.
Hi. Ahmad, I know, is a Californian, and he's a graduate of UC San Diego. And one thing I know about him for sure is that he must be missing the seasonal weather of Southern California as opposed to this perpetual winter we're all in now. Who wouldn't, right? So encountering Ahmad's writing this year was a breath of fresh air for me. In what has been an incredibly difficult year for everyone, his writing managed to make me actually laugh out loud. And for anyone that has tried writing anything with a comedic element, this is, I think, an incredibly rare ability. Of course, it's more than funny. The comedy is of the kind found in, for instance, Catch-22, which is to say it is comic tragedy, highlighting in an incisive and devastating way the recursive fractal absurdity of the way we live now and the impositions that are often forced upon us by forces outside of our control. He has an incredible talent for well-drawn scenes filled with movement, action, and pitch perfect dialogue. As it turns out, these are all things that I've been trying to improve in my own writing, which is to say I'm learning a lot from being in workshop with him already. So thanks, Ahmad, and enjoying his writing thoroughly, as I'm sure you will today. So Ahmad, take it away.
Thanks, Philip. And to prove your point, I chose one of the more depressing parts of my novel. So I'm going to be reading from my thesis. It's an excerpt that's not from the beginning, so some necessary context. The narrator was fired the day before. Let's get into it. Alia wakes suffocating. Under the thick tangle of sheets, she feels a layer of stale sweat sticking to her skin, even as new beads of moisture add to it. Her throat is burning with thirst, and the air is thick and sluggish, and made all the worse by the sunlight bursting through the window. She can feel a body next to her, feel the emanating heat and the breath pressing into her neck, adding to the damp. She turns to see a man in bed next to her. She peers past his long, oily brown hair, trying to think. She remembers him being more handsome last night, until she realizes she doesn't remember last night at all. Her phone goes off, vibrating against her glass desk across the room. She bolts out of bed in alarm, stumbling over a pile of dirty laundry as she reaches the disturbance. In big, plain letters, Lyra shows on her phone screen as it shakes against the glass surface. But her eyes shoot up to the time, 9:26. She curses as she realizes she's late, so late for work. She rushes to her closet, pausing to pick up a used condom from the floor. It's not even in the right direction of the trash can. She throws it away and looks into her closet. The only option left to her is a single white blouse. Opening a wardrobe drawer, she's met with nothing but a pair of black bras. Groaning, she side-eyes the pile of laundry she was supposed to take care of yesterday. She is going to show up to work covered in a day's worth of sweat, with a bra showing through her shirt. Then she realizes she's not going to do any of that. She doesn't need to worry about showing up late like that to work. She doesn't have the option to worry. She sinks to the floor, chest caving into her knees, face falling into hands. She doesn't cry, she just sits there, huddled into herself. She already knows what her day is going to be because all she has to do is remember what it was 6 years ago. Her day will be long and lazy. She'll pass it in apathy, negotiating with herself on the day's goals, shrinking them into ever more manageable bites of progress until taking a shower is a victory. She'll check her email to feel productive before finding herself face first in bed, waiting for the day to end. She won't want to do anything. She won't want to look for a job, won't want to watch any shows, won't want to read or go out or watch a movie. She won't even want to stay in, but that'll be the only thing left for her to do. She won't want to think either. She already doesn't. She doesn't want to remind herself of anything, of her job, her night, her day, her actions, her words. She doesn't want anything. Soon, she'll get up and start watching something on a laptop, ignoring her nakedness, ignoring the random man in her bed. It won't matter what she watches, she'll just click on something and use it as background as she stews in self-loathing. Her mental flagellation will be her only source of comfort, the only action she'll be able to complete. Tomorrow, she'll tell herself, tomorrow will be a promise. She knows this because all she'll end up doing, all she's already doing, is waiting for tomorrow. Tomorrow will become today. The promise will be broken. As she sits, still curled, all these images run through her mind, dislodging each other in their cascade to the front. And the small dopamine hit of familiarity, of nostalgia hits her. A laugh forces its way out of her throat. A sound she can't even recognize as her own. But it's funny, she admits, that even these memories have the glaze of reminiscence. Loud pounding on the door jolts her out of her own head. She almost goes to answer it as an automatic response, but decides to ignore it in the hopes that the knocker will return the favor. But more knocking follows. Then her phone starts ringing. When she reaches it, it says Lyra again. As the knocking only increases in intensity, and as the phone continues to violently shake against the glass, she pieces it together. She picks up the phone. I'll be right there, she says, hanging up. Alia tosses on the first pajamas she grabs out of a wardrobe and finds herself leaving her bedroom in condiment-colored red and yellow. She takes a sweeping look over her kitchen and living room as she walks to her door, making sure nothing embarrassing is lying around. The dishes in the sink make the kitchen a bit of a mess, but her bare living room is clean. She opens the door to see Lyra, her long black hair tied into a ponytail. She pulls Alia into a hug, the height disparity forcing Alia's face into her collarbone. Alia returns the embrace before gently pushing her away. I was so worried about you, Lyra says, her face somewhere between pouting and glaring. Yeah, sorry, I missed your call this morning, Alia replies. I didn't come up here because you missed a call 5 minutes ago. You skipped out on all of our plans last night, then never replied to any of my messages. Ring a bell? Oh, Alia says, mustering up some emotion. I'm so sorry, Lyra. I totally forgot. I forgot a lot of things last night. It's 100% on me. Well, yeah, she replies. I never thought any of it was on me. I'm overwhelmed, overrun by everything, even talking, she wants to say. I'm sorry, Lyra, she says instead. Lyra purses her lips. Are you okay? Wait, no, I have a better question. Why aren't you okay? You should stop standing outside, Alia says. Come in. Lyra enters, taking a seat on the couch as she looks around the apartment. You really need to brighten this place up, or darken it up. Really do anything to it besides keeping it empty. I've never been good at decorating. You don't need to be good at it, just buy stuff. Alia shrugs and closes the door, opting to remain standing. So, Lyra says, what happened last night? Alia explains what had happened yesterday. She feels so cold while recounting the details, so nonsensical describing the situation, disconnected from her own words. When Alia's finished, Lyra catches her off guard with another hug. We need to get you out of this apartment, Lyra says. I don't know, Lyra. Don't know what? A voice says from behind her. Alia turns to see the brown-haired man walking out of her bedroom, putting his shirt back on. Oh no, Lyra says. This is worse than I thought. He's deep in desperation-lay territory. I can hear you, the man says. I usually say things when I want people to hear me, Lyra replies. Aren't you going to defend me? The man asks Alia. The petulance in his demand irks her. What do I look like, your mother? Yeah, kind of. Okay, Lyra says. I'm going to nip that in the bud. You, she says to the man, need to leave immediately. Why don't we ask the person who owns the place? He replies with a nod to Alia. I honestly don't know why you're still here, Alia says. Take that as you will. There's only one way to take that, he says. Makes it easier for you, Leo replies. You don't even know my name, and you're kicking me out. Honestly, Lyra says, not asking for your name should have been the first hint that you were getting kicked out. Do you have any idea who I am? You just complained that we don't even know your name. He exchanges glares with Lyra before storming by them, slamming the door shut as he leaves. Now that we've dealt with the first emergency, we need to deal with you, Lyra says. Lyra, did you just call me an emergency? She frowns. We both saw who walked out that door. Okay, he wasn't that bad. Emergency confirmed. Lyra, come with me. Alia waits for her to add some sort of context until relenting and asking, are you going to follow that up with anything? Sorry, Lyra says, I thought you'd keep protesting. I'm too tired to. Well, stop being too tired, because you're going to need that protesting energy. Lyra, I'm not joining your social activism group. I know, you don't have to join them. Just join me. I have a feeling that you're going to invite me to something where that would be the same exact thing. Yes, no. Lyra makes a face at her. You've just been fired. You're probably feeling like your entire world is upside down, uncertain about your future and what your own life is going to look like. She puts a comforting hand on Alia's shoulder. So you should take advantage of that utter lack of stability and risk trying something new anyway. Don't worry, Lyra. It's okay to give bad advice, and I forgive you. But it's a new day. Every day is a new day, which is why you should always try something new. Alia sighs. Is there anything special about today? Lyra opens her mouth, besides the fact that it's a new day. Other people could explain it better than me, she says, so I'll let them. She pulls out her phone and turns it so Alia can see. It's a video. After getting through an ad for donating money to a plasma collecting organization, it starts. A group of friends walk down the street, chattering as the camera follows them, dance music playing in the distance. The camera cuts to close-up shots of a frenzied crowd, bodies passing by in colorful blurs, then back to the friends, back and forth. The cuts picking up tempo as the volume of the music climbs. Each cut to the friends shows someone new joining them, from office buildings, from cafes, from alleys, from street-side houses. Then the two scenes meet. The friends round a corner and the camera shows them facing a huge crowd full of movement and sound and energy. The camera pans up slightly to reveal the banner hanging above the crowd. March Against Madness in big red letters clashing against neon yellow fabric. The friends turn to look at each other, breaking out into broad smiles as they shed their shirts to reveal what they had been wearing this entire time. Also shirts, but shirts with slogans and hashtags and declarative words on them. Hashtag liberation, hashtag education. Our voice, say no to silence, we before me. The friends stride toward the crowd as the camera pans out once more to display the sprawling banner. This time in an even broader shot to reveal the full extent of the crowd. A mass of people bouncing between stalls and tents and stages and flashing lights without discernible source. Then cut to black before white text appears. Make a difference. Come. Join. Matter. The words cycle, speeding up until they blur together, and she can't read anything before it all just stops. McDonald's March Against Madness. Underneath in smaller text. McDonald's and March Against Madness. Two places where heart matters. Isn't it great? Lyra says as she pulls the phone back. I don't really know what it's trying to say, Alia responds. Well, that's what the text at the end is for, Lyra replies. Yeah, I don't know what the March Against Madness is. It's a festival to raise awareness for mental illness, of course. Is a crowded festival really the best way of accomplishing that? Alia asks. What's more indicative of mental wellness than a giant crowd of people having fun? I don't know, Alia says, but that's definitely not indicative of my mental wellness. And I'm kind of busy with that now. Leva seems to be on the verge of tears. You're not coming. That is what I just said. Yes, Alia replies. It's not my scene, Leva, recently fired or not. But another knock on the door interrupts them. When she opens it, there's nothing but a package on the floor, an envelope taped to the top of it. She brings the package inside and places it on the table. Work things, it's labeled. She opens the envelope and pulls out a letter. Dear Alia, as your friend, I wanted to reach out to you, to let you know that I'm still here for you. The last time we saw each other was stressful for the both of us. You lost your job and I dropped that jade elephant. It broke. I think we both went through a lot that evening. Packing this box of your things really hit me, and I'm sorry that I can't be there for you right now. I just want you to know that you'll always be in my mind and heart, and that if you ever need anything, I'll come running. You're an amazing person, Alia, and I hope you'll be all right. As your former boss, please fill out the online exit survey on the company website. Sincerely, Ruben. Alia sets the letter aside. She grabs a knife from the kitchen and slices the package open. Inside is an empty box. I'll go, Alia says.
Good job. Thank you, Ahmad. And thank you to all of our readers and everyone who introduced them. I don't see any questions that currently came up in the chat, but if anybody has some responses or questions for any of the writers who read tonight, feel free to just unmute and say it. We'll stay on for maybe a couple more minutes.
Question for Rebecca. It's about, because I was really excited to hear part of the sci-fi novel project, because I've been hearing a lot about it but hadn't heard anything. And wait, oh, you're in Elisa's thing. Okay.
I'm on Elisa's couch.
I was like, where are you? Okay. And so I wanted to ask a little bit. I mean, I'm a huge fan of like anything speculative, obviously, and I'm always really interested in kind of like the writing process of world building. And I love the line, I wrote it down, or like the phrase, when the planet where they land with the spaceship is being described, and the line was something like Florida but purple, which is just great. And I wanted to ask, because a lot of the description had to do with how the characters are, relating the planet back to where they came from. Like there's that tied to the Everglades and that kind of thing. And so I wanted to ask, when you were writing it, and maybe this varies, but were you kind of thinking of the planet first and then, relating it back to Earth, or were you kind of thinking about which parts of the Earth you wanted to have show up in the planet, if that makes sense? Like, were you kind of, which direction was that happening, or was it happening in both directions when you were
the planet like has a lot to do with it feels so funny to say the sentence, my relationship with Florida, but like I write a lot about Florida. Anyone who knows that I'm in work, anyone who's been in workshop with me, like has seen me writing about Florida. And like this planet came from me like exploring the weirdness of Florida and thinking about like, this feels like such a basic answer, but what it might be to like isolate that in its own universe, if that makes sense. I don't know if that like speaks to what you're asking, but the planet started with Florida, and that's directly where that sentence came from, and that's like where my creation of it started from.
Yeah, no, that helps. Thank you. Yeah, I love that it is just kind of all of Florida's weirdness, or all of the parts of Florida's weirdness that you like. That's awesome. Thanks.
Thank you, Naima, for that great question. Does anybody else have a question?
I have a question for Ahmad. I was wondering, something that really struck me while you were reading was the kind of like interruption as a narrative device, like the text messages and the knocking and like the package as like as something that was kind of disrupting the scene. And I was wondering if that's something that you think about a lot consciously, or that you thought about while you were writing this piece in particular, and if there was like something, if there are writers, who do that well, that have inspired you.
Yeah, I mean, now that you asked that question, I'll think of it consciously. No, yeah, I mean, modern life is very intrusive. There are things interrupting us all the time. So that's just something I insert in my stories. I guess that wasn't necessarily a thing I took inspiration from any specific author, but I guess Philip did mention Catch-22 because I talk about it all the time. And Catch-22, of course, does use that sort of narrative device often. People are constantly interrupting each other or being interrupted by various things.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Any final questions? If not, we can just go ahead and end the evening. All right. Is that good with everybody? Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and especially thank you so much to Austyn, Ahmad, and Rebecca for reading, and everyone for introducing them. Stay safe and have a wonderful night. Thank you all.